There's two behind it.
Oh, okay.
Never mind that. This one wrong.
All right, so advice. So we're going to start with the definition here so that we know exactly what advice is and what it isn't. So advice is any counsel or suggestion that could influence a player in determining his line of play, his play, the choice of the club that he's going to hit the shot with, and the method of making the stroke. So those are three things that are going to kind of trigger advice. So anything that we tell a player or a spectator or someone else tells a player that could influence this, and the player takes it or asks for this advice, we're going to have a penalty.
And here's one where you can use an acronym. It's PCM. Play, choice of club, method of making a stroke.
Okay.
Like Holmes for the Great Lakes.
Yeah, no, exactly. Using those mnemonic advices are definitely good ways to remember things, and everyone can kind of come up with their own. But I think that's a good one to use there, definitely. So what is an advice? Information such as distance or matters of public information, such as where hazards are or where the flag stick is or where the putting green is. That is not advice. So if someone were to be on the tee and say, is this a par 4 or par 5? The player could answer that question freely. They wouldn't be given advice by answering that question. If they ask, is the hole on the left side here? Does it dog leg? That's fine. But they can't. But a player couldn't say the best way to hit the shot is to take it over the trees on the right because it dog legs to the right. That would be advice. But if they're just saying the shape of the hole, or if they're saying distance or something like that, that's not advice. All right. So during a stipulated round, that's an important distinction because if it's not during a stipulated round, it's not advice. So a player must not give advice to anyone in the competition playing on the course other than his partner, or ask for advice from anyone other than his partner or either of their caddies. So two key words there: can't give advice, can't ask for advice. Either one, we're going to have a penalty. Okay, and then going back to that stipulated round, so if we have a situation where, let's say that there's an 18-hole round, and after that we're going to have a playoff. Well, if it's a, let's say it's a junior event and the dad is walking with their kid at the first hole, they can tell them anything they want. They can give them advice during that time because it's not during the stipulated round once those 18 holes are over. It's different in match play where you have your stipulated round kind of continues if it's all square and you're going to go and you have to decide it, then that is still part of the stipulated round. So in that case, you wouldn't be able to. Another instance you might see if you're doing a 36-hole event, so the senior mid-am team, you could get advice in between those 18-hole rounds. If you wanted to go and work on something in the driving range in between or whatever, that'd be fine. But it's two separate 18-hole rounds. Once that stipulated round starts, then you can't receive advice or ask for advice. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Indicating line of play. So other than on the putting green is a little bit different. So except on the putting green, a player can have the line of play indicated to him by anyone, but no one can be positioned by that player for the purpose or on close to that line or an extension of that line beyond the hole while the stroke is being made. So let's say you've got a blind shot on a par 4 and you can't see the green. You could have your caddy or another fellow competitor walk up to the top of the hill and help line you up, but that person cannot stay there while you're hitting the shot. So before you make your stroke, that person has to leave, but that person can help line you up, but they just can't stand there. And they couldn't leave a mark. They couldn't leave a hat or something on the ground or a towel to mark that spot. So any mark placed by the player or with his knowledge for the purpose of indicating the line of play must be removed before the stroke is made. So if that caddy were to leave his hat on the top of the hill there and they didn't move it before the player hit, we'd have a penalty. But again, it's no penalty to go up there and get your line. You can have someone else help you line you up, and then you can use something natural. Let's say there's a tree in the distance that the player wants to use to line themselves up, they can. Or maybe there's a discolor in the grass around a certain point that they want to aim. That's natural. That's something they can use to line up. Okay, now the one exception is the flag stick. So the flag stick can be held up or attended anywhere on the golf course, as we learned. So if you want to have the flag stick held up, you can directly above the hole. So you could have someone, if you're deep in a bunker, maybe an 8-foot bunker where you couldn't see the green, you could have someone attend the flag stick and hold it directly above the hole, and that's okay. In that instance, that player could stay in there. All right, now on the putting green, it's a little bit different. So the line of putt on the putting green,
Kyle, just
yeah.
go back your slide. Wasn't there a decision on line of play where the player put his towel on the edge of a creek over a hill?
Yeah, but it wasn't on the line. I thought it was off to the side.
It was inadvertent, kind of.
It was.
He left his towel there while he was taking relief from a water hazard. Then he took relief back. The towel ended up being on his line of play, but it wasn't left there with the intention of being on his line of play. So there wasn't a penalty in that situation. Is that
That's what I remember. Yeah.
right?
All right, so this one says, in taking relief from its 8-2A/0.5, page 142.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, for example, the following actions are not a breach of Rule 8-2A. So, in taking relief from water hazard, a player places the towel at the point where he estimates the ball last crossed the margin of the hazard, and the player drops back on the line to the hole under Rule 26-1B, and the towel is on his line of play when the player makes a stroke. As the towel was not placed for the purpose of indicating the line of play, there is no breach of Rule 8-2A. So that would be, maybe that's what you're referencing in terms of, like Craig said, that towel wasn't placed there for the purpose of lining up. So even if it happened to be there, it'd be okay.
Read the however, though. That's it.
So, however, the following example is an action that would be a breach. So prior to the player making a stroke from 5 yards off the green, and with the player's knowledge, his caddy places the player's bag at a specific position behind the green for the purpose of indicating the point where the player should aim, and leaves the bag in place. So that would be a penalty. And that's actually one of our key decisions in this rules too. So that's a good one to reference. All right, so on the putting green, like I said, a little bit different. So on the putting green, the line of putt may be indicated before but not during the stroke by the player, his partner, either the caddies, but the green cannot be touched when doing this. So a lot of times you'll see a caddy with a flag stick, and they'll kind of hover the flag stick, the end of the flag stick over the green to point out where they want to aim. That's okay, but if they touch the green, then we've got a penalty. And you'll see the same thing. The caddies or players will get down, partners will get down and almost touch the green with their finger, but they'll leave a little bit of room because they can't touch the green there. However, if the player's off the green, let's say they're chipping or they're putting from the fringe, they can touch the green in that case because it's not a line of putt, right? Because we're not on the green. Line of putt says that we're on the green. If we're off the green, it's okay if we touch the green to point out where we want to aim, as long as we're not doing any other things that we can't do in the green, like fix a spike mark or something like that.
And if the player's ball is on the green, the caddy can touch the fringe
Right.
with
vice
the end of
versa.
the flagstick
Mhm.
or whatever.
All right, so any penalty under this is going to be, or under Rule 8 is going to be for match play, loss a hole, and for stroke play, 2 strokes. So if we have if a player gives advice to another player that's playing, that's going to be a penalty, a 2-stroke penalty. If a player, let's say we're going back to advice and we're on the tee and the player says, "Oh, what club did you hit on that shot there?" and they haven't, and the guy that asked that hasn't played yet, then that person's going to get a 2-stroke penalty in stroke play, and then if the player answers it, that person will also get a 2-stroke penalty.
You can ask it, if he doesn't answer, you're still penalized?
Correct. But so let's say that I asked you and you know the rules and you don't answer.
I go like this.
Yeah, exactly.
But don't show them your
Right.
club either.
Right. Don't show them your club or anything. I mean, it's not necessarily a verbal thing. You could, if you hold up your club and show it to them, that's essentially giving advice, and so you'd be penalized for that.
But in match play, if he asks, you can go ahead and answer because the second he asks, he lost the hole.
Right. Assuming that there's that a claim is made and or there's a referee there. Right? It's not necessarily, I mean, you would have to make a claim if there's no referee there, right?
Well, if he's going to dispute it.
Well, if the referee's there, it's going to be automatic. The referee should call.
Yeah.
Right. But let's just say, you and I were playing and I asked, and it's not necessarily lost a hole unless.
Well, if
unless
Craig
they-
didn't know anything about it, you could get away with it.
Sure.
That's about it.
Yeah.
How can they get around it on the tour when the caddy kind of indicates to the TV announcer what club he shoots?
Yeah, so that's a little bit different. I mean, most of the caddies have a system, so usually they'll. I don't remember exactly, but I think like 5-iron is a standard, and so if it's like the 6-iron, they'll do one, so one less than 5. Usually like 3 or something like that. So there's some type of system that they have that the caddies kind of communicate with the announcers and stuff like that. But that's different. They're not telling other players. They're telling the announcers. They're telling the people on TV what they're hitting.
The player benefits from it if he sees it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Mhm.
But the player could also look into the other person's golf bag as well. So let's say that you're on the tee and you're not sure what to hit. I mean, you can look into a fellow competitor's bag, and if there's nothing in the way to prevent you from seeing what club's missing, that's permissible by the rules.
But you can't,
But yeah, right. You couldn't move it around if there was a towel covering it.
No.
couldn't nudge it down, fall on the ground, and you pick it up.
That's what you normally do.
Throw 'em out on the-
Because I know what they hit. I know they hit 2 more than what he hit.
That's a good question, and that kind of leads to another exception that we see. So we'll see exceptions in match play competitions like the Ryder Cup. We'll see exceptions in team play. So whether that's high school golf or college golf, you'll see exceptions, and they can put that in via local rule. So here's the note in the rule. And the next slide here will show you a couple examples of the local rules. So this first one is the local rule straight out of the book, the rules book, decisions book. So in accordance with the note to Rule 8 of the rules of golf, each team may appoint one person in addition to the persons from whom advice may be asked under this rule. So your caddy or your partner or your partner's caddy, who may give advice to members of that team. Such person, if it is desired to whatever, you can insert any restriction there, must be identified to the committee before giving advice. So that's kind of the generic one. Here's one from the NCAA Division I women's hard card that they have. So you'll see here that they're able to modify it to 2 people, not just 1. But so in accordance with the note to Rule 8 of the rules of golf, each team may designate 2 coaches to give advice to members of that team. The coaches must be identified to the committee before giving advice. A player may accept verbal communication, notes, and any items left behind by teammates and or coaches for the purpose of giving, sorry. Let me start over. So a player may accept verbal and hand signal advice from her institution's designated coaches only. Electronic communication, notes, and any other items left behind by teammates and or coaches for the purpose of giving advice are prohibited. And then players must avoid communication between other players and spectators that could be deemed advice of any nature during the stipulated round. All institutional personnel, with the exception of the designated coaches, are considered spectators. So that's what they use at the college level. So usually they'll designate the head coach and the assistant coach if they have one to be able to talk to players. And it's, again, this is coach to player, it's not player to player. So in the Ryder Cup, Tiger can't tell Phil Mickelson, play this hole 10 yards longer because I just blew a 7-iron over the green. Unless they're partners, they can do that. But if they're not playing in the same match or they're not partners, they would not be allowed to do that. But Davis Love could tell, Tiger could tell Davis, and Davis could tell Phil. In that case. And so one last thing before we move on to match play, but the one thing with advice is that there's kind of a fine line, and Craig and Gene and others, you guys can kind of comment on this, but there's a fine line of advice in what is advice, talking in terms of something that may help calm someone down or may help take their focus off golf, could be considered advice if it's helping them get in a better mental state. So there's lots of different things that may not seem like advice. You could see this in a junior event where you see maybe a dad or a mom walking down side by side with a player, and then you approach them and say, "Oh, we're not talking about anything about golf." But if you're talking about something that helps them calm down, it could be advice. So there's kind of a fine line. It's not always necessarily about golf that could be advice.
It usually works the other way around
Right.
with dads and daughters.
Yeah.
And mixture out there. Bad.
You'll see out there in our junior tournaments, players are pretty familiar with each other. They do a lot of talking.
Well,
So we're a little lenient with them we tell them, hey, okay, you guys, they don't know much about Rule 8 at all about giving advice. So we're somewhat lenient. First time you may see it, we're warning them and telling them what they can and cannot do. So just be ready for that.
Yeah, you'll hear something that may be close to advice, and you just want to say, like, be careful. You can't say, or you can't tell them what club to hit or something like that.
Yeah, you'll hear downright advice.
Even though that they may have, but you just kind of say it in a way for them to learn that they can't do it going forward.
You just tell them, be careful what you say. It'll cost you too.
Right.
But they can do anything if you have a rain delay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
All right. We're out of this. Key decisions for Rule 8. 8-1/20, 8-1/25, 8-2A/0.5. So that's the one that we read over a little bit ago. And then 8-2B/3.
Going up and down.
You came prepared, didn't you?
All right. Switch it over.
Oh, the big one? You gonna take that? You gonna do it? No. Do they know yet? You'll ask Jeannie when she's not paying attention. Jeannie, when are they gonna have tests in Michigan again?
Test for what?
USGA. The big test.
The big blue school?
Mhm.
Supposedly next year.
Mhm.
I think we're overdue.
Do you have the Michigan test online?
I don't know if there's a test. Is there a test?
We're in the process of developing one.
Okay.
We'll have one by the in like 1 to 2 weeks. So yes, there will be a test that we'll have, and we'll towards the end of these sessions we'll go over some of the practice tests from the USGA as well.
I can't answer. Nick's not going to answer the USDA.
I don't think he reads our answers.
It's so tempted just to delete his.
That still wasn't bad.
Well, I thought it wasn't bad until I got my results back.
I think that's
True the book.
I thought he had it all right, but apparently I didn't.
Or he doesn't agree with, because he wrote it one way, but you had the same answer, but you wrote it a little bit different. He doesn't agree with that.
I know. He likes the wording. He likes the wording.
You know, because we can't see that it and or, you know.
Yeah, you use a definition to answer the question, but he wants it, the decision.
What does is mean? Bill,
Like I didn't have any
Yeah.
of the materials started first. We had it from later.
or I knew all the material, but I misunderstood the questions.
Yeah. It comes back and highlights a little more. May.
See, he's harder on you guys. I'm a rookie, so he's easy. He wants to stick around, maybe.
I'm afraid to answer any of his quizzes.
Sheepers it was.
I already told him I quit.
Anybody know what Mark's gonna talk about specifically?
No, I don't. I mean, Craig, maybe you know.
Still being somewhat formulated. Ken has been talking to Mark about 15, 12, and 20, I think,
15, 12, and 20.
As they currently exist.
as it currently exists. He might talk a little bit about the proposed, but not a whole lot about the
That only
2019
confuses
proposed change.
more.
It will for me.
I'm watching all this stuff on TV and I just go, too many.
Wait until our first event and we have to work under the proposed use.
15, 12, and 20.
Did you see that Seminole adopted the new rules?
Yeah, they're playing tournaments in accordance with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that means they can't post those scores.
That's right.
Yeah. They came out and said they're, want to play rounds in accordance with the new rules.
Yeah.
So they encouraged all their membership to do that. That's the way I read it. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
it'll probably just be something temporary.
Yeah,
Temporary, just every once in a while. So that's probably not, you're not changing for every round per
I don't
se.
think it's going to make that much difference.
But no.
We'll be getting into a hazard.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
I didn't mean
Or
They
it.
don't. There, they don't have
The Michigan Sea
areas that
Publics, they got
are, that could be considered hazard, not hazard. It's fairly distinguished there. So. All right, so match play. So first off, order of play. So in match play, obviously order of play is very important. So when starting to play the hole, the side that has the honor at the first team round is determined by the order of the draw. In absence of the draw, the honor should be decided by lot. So the side that wins each hole is going to have the honor at the next tee. We all know this. And the one key thing to keep straight is that honor is only on the team ground. You're not determining honor once you start to play the hole. It's a little bit different.
And the draw, at least as I understand it, is what you guys put together. Who's ever on top
Who's ever highest up, yep.
is the one that's going to play. But if you didn't seed them that way, then you could draw straws or flip a coin.
numbers.
But draw does have, although it's not defined a meaning, it's people that organize the tournament.
It's just whoever's highest on top is going to have the honor. So, yep. All right, so during the play of the hole, obviously it's going to be the ball that's farther from the hole that's played first. So if both balls are the same yardage, then we'll decide that by lot. flip a coin or flip a C, whatever we have there. Okay. The exception is in 4-ball play. Your side, the side that's away can choose who plays first. So if you're on the putting green and you have one person putting from 30 feet for eagle, and you got someone in close 2 feet away for birdie, that person from 2 feet can play first. So the person that's putting from farther away, the eagle, can give it a run. So there's that exception there for 4-ball play. So, and the other thing here, obviously, when both balls are in the middle of the fairway, it's pretty straightforward as to the distance from the hole. The question is when we hit the ball in a position where it's maybe out of bounds or it's in a water hazard or something like that. What do we do at that point? So at that point, when it becomes known that the original ball is not to be played as it lies, and the player is required to go back to where they last played from under Rule 20-5, the order of play is going to be determined by that spot from where the previous stroke was made. So if someone hits it out of bounds, for example, that their ball is going to be deemed to lie from where they last hit from. So let's say you got a player that's 100 yards away and a player that's 150 yards away. The player from 150 is going to play first. If they pump it out of bounds, they're going to play again.
Before the other guy's place?
Exactly, yep. And let's say that they hit it towards out of bounds. They're not sure if it's out of bounds. They hit a provisional. Who plays first? The person that hits provisional or the player that's 100 yards away?
20 yards away.
100, no, the person that hits the provisional is going to play first.
I knew it was going to be around
50.
So, okay, and then the other thing is when we're not in a position where we're not required to play from where we last played from. If we have options, let's say we get into a water hazard, it's going to be different. We're going to determine our who's away by where the ball lay in the hazard. So just as an example, everyone remembers Eagle Eye. Oh, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people remember Eagle Eye. So number 9 is a par 5, and I was walking a match, and I didn't know that the referee was supposed to jump in and determine the order of play. But so we have player 1 hit. They both hit the fairway, and then player 1 hits his ball left, which is with water running on the left side there, about equal with the green. Hits a good 3-wood, but just never crosses the line up there. It just goes right in the water. The other guy, shorter hitter, laid up to about 100 yards. All right, so the other guy can't go up there and drop near the flag or the green, and he's going to take his line back, but he's still about 200 yards away from the hole, whereas the other guy's like 100. So the guy drops and he hits it, which was not right, because if we think about that, we need to determine where the original ball was, because the player had his options under lateral water hazard to either play it from there. He could have dropped 2 club lengths, gone back in the line. But that point where the ball came to rest, or where we have a good understanding of where it came to rest, was closer to the hole than this other guy that laid up. Okay, Jerry?
No,
Okay. So basically, I didn't speak up and tell them that the guy, Justin, who laid up, should have played first, even though he was hitting from 100 yards as opposed to Jared, the other guy that was hitting from 200 yards away. And so even though Jared had dropped and everything, Justin, who laid up, still has the the right to play first. And even though you could try to tell the players that, and they would just look at you and be like, "You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to play," which probably would have happened in that case. But that's how it is. So yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I mean, I understand if the guy's up in the water, other guy hits first, because that could affect his decision as to what he's going to do. Is he going to try and play it out of the water? Does he want 2 club lengths, or does he want to draw a line all the way back? But when he draws the line all the way back, and drops his ball and it leaves his fingers, that's ball in play.
You bet.
Now, isn't that ball in play? Doesn't that supersede so that he is now away?
Hmm.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, here, I'm not
Because it
looking at the
says when a
specific position, I'm
ball,
just thinking logically.
This last sentence says, when a ball may be played from a spot other. All right, once he's dropped it, now ball may be played. That's gone.
That's ball in play.
Because that ball's now in play. I have a little drawing.
I guess you do. I'd be surprised if you didn't.
This is your
Took us all year to
tool.
get that.
I want to see what page you're on.
Where her drawing is.
I saw the drawing.
My drawing is B clumps his tee shot off, and he's only about 80 yards off the tee, and A hits it out of bounds. A is still going to play first because he's got to come back to the tee.
Right.
But now the water hazard one, A is way up here near the green in the water hazard, and at that point he has a lot of options, so B would be playing first. But once he has taken stroke and distance or dropping back and is farther from the hole, now he's in play and he plays first.
So if he wants to see the shot.
But
So
only,
really,
Where's
But-
the decision
So he's
for that?
got an
'Cause that's not what I was told at rule school.
When a ball may be played from a spot, once he's dropped the ball, he can't play it from another spot.
Tony, what was your question?
I don't know.
Yeah, but Gene, when he dropped it,
If it's in the
Didn't he
water
play out of
and
order?
he hasn't made a choice yet,
Wait, let the 100-yard away guy hit.
yeah.
You make your decision.
Yes,
You drop
exactly.
down, you're okay.
That's what you
That's
do.
what you
But
should
once
do.
you've made your decision and put a ball into play, now it governs. Yes,
Keyword is may.
the key word is may.
It's the little words in the law that'll get you.
The ball and a ball.
And may, and might,
Shall.
and Mick.
and may.
Yeah, Mick.
So Gene, you're saying though that if you draw a line of where the player crossed the last hazard at Eagle Eye,
Oh, I don't know eagle eye.
Let's
Oh, the
say-
ninth hole?
yeah, the ninth hole, I mean,
Yeah.
the only place for that player to drop is pretty much farther away than where,
Well, the way he described it, he had dropped.
let's say he hadn't dropped yet.
If he hadn't dropped, then you have to determine,
Which ball is
then
closer?
this applies.
Yeah,
Because he
technically-
still has all of
the
his
guy that
options.
played
Technically, they're still
And
play
if-
out of the hazard
If his
potential.
only option is way, way back at the tee, I don't know the answer at that point. Because if that's his only option and there was no other option that he had at number 9,
Well, no, I don't think that would matter if he hits it in the lateral water hazard. He has his options, and even if it's not practical to do anything but go back to tee, we would still use that point.
Yeah.
It's because there's still an option.
It's a matter of what is the opponent entitled to know before the opponent makes their stroke. So if you're on the tee and you knock it out of bounds, that guy's got it, that person has to hit again because the opponent is entitled to know.
Right.
I mean, he hits it out a second time, and now you're lying 5 in the fairway. You're entitled to know that before you hit your tee shot. And so what makes sense there is, yeah, the ball's further ahead in the water. Just don't make your decision.
don't make your decision and
Let
let the other guy
person
play.
hit. Now,
Because the other guy could dunk it in the water and that might determine now which of the 5 options you're going to
what you
take.
want. Yeah.
But once you put it in play, then he has to play.
That makes sense.
It's in 2 places in this rule. It's over on the top of page 155 also. It's almost the same paragraph. Because one's match play and one's stroke play. See
Right,
there,
so that would make sense. So once the player drops, then he's not able to play.
he doesn't have any other options. That ball's in play,
Now
yeah.
you're comparing the 2 balls in play. Before, his ball in play was closer to the hole.
Right.
All right.
So as long as the player doesn't drop,
drop.
then it's determined by where the ball comes to rest. But once they drop, which they're not entitled to drop, but if they do drop, then that's their new reference point. Is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect.
One thing we get questioned about too a lot is we have handicap, stroke, and match play nowadays. Groups are confused in terms of who has the honors when there's handicap involved. And for stroke play, it's always the gross score of the hole, because the handicaps aren't determined. They're not determined hole by hole. They're determined at the end of the round. So it's always the gross score. So players aren't getting, even though they get a stroke on that hole, and they may have had a lower net score, if that would have been their net, the stroke they would have gotten a stroke on. I mean, anyways, strokes are taken off at the end of the round. So it's always the gross score during stroke play, but during match play, then it's during the.
No.
It's actually.
Yes, it is, but that has nothing to do with it.
Well, honors at the tee, I mean.
Honor the tee.
Honors at the tee.
Oh, at the tee.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's the net. Yeah.
It's the net. It's always the gross score during stroke and the net during match.
Correct.
Oh, say that again?
Even in
Honors
a
at the
net
tee,
championship.
Net championships.
Okay.
Honors at the tee are determined by gross score during stroke play and net scores during match play. Because in stroke play, you're not getting a stroke adjustment
Yeah.
until the end of the
Yeah.
round.
Yeah.
Whereas you're getting them during each hole during the round.
If you're a 10 handicap,
Like
you
in the
get done,
net
you
team?
deduct 10
Yeah.
strokes, that's your
Okay.
score.
Yeah.
Whereas in match play,
Let's play, it's
it
marked on the
matters whether
card.
you're getting a stroke
That's why I got
against your
confusing
opponent.
several times. Yeah. 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 Okay.
All right, so playing on a turn. Play. So if a player plays when his opponent should have played, there's no penalty, but the opponent may immediately require the player to cancel the stroke. And then play a ball in the correct order.
Don't be a shuffle.
So again, it's not required, but the player, if a player plays out of order, they can recall the shot. So a couple weeks ago, we had the question about player in match play playing out of turn to play faster or to avoid interference. That would be okay, but that person would have the right to recall the stroke. Now, I did ask Mark if we had our question about
Give
if
permission.
if we give him permission, does that waive the right? And he said, yeah, he thinks that decision 10-1C/3 would cover that, which is the one that we were talking about in our discussion. So in that case, if the player, let's say that the player putts and his ball is a foot away from the hole and it's right in the other player's line, if the player goes ahead and says, do you mind if I putt this first to get out of your way, in match play, and the other player says, yes, that's okay, he can put it in, it's okay, but he can't recall that stroke.
It's just giving permission.
Right,
It's kind of like a concession. Once it's offered, it can't be rescinded.
right.
That's anywhere on the hole. That's, if you're looking for your ball,
Sure.
go and hit.
Sure,
That's
sure.
That's
Yep.
got to be in the green.
Yep. So again, it's this playing on turn is not it doesn't have to be recalled. It's really up to you. I mean, if a player hits a really good shot, you're probably going to recall it. But if a player hits a bad shot, you're probably just going to let him play it. The other example that you could think about, if you saw someone playing from the wrong tee, maybe they were playing hole 7 instead of hole 9. You may let them hit from hole 7 because once they hit that, they're going to be 600, 700 yards away from the hole, and you're probably going to win that hole once they play from the wrong tee.
But if you're a referee, you got to tell them go to the
Exactly.
correct tee.
Exactly. But if the match has a referee, the referee's going to stop them, unless the referee's confused as well, which could happen.
Sometimes they don't.
Could happen if it's your first time on the course as a referee, and then you might walk up to the wrong tee. And,
Or if they change between morning and afternoon.
Sure.
You started the whole, or just between the players, like
in match play,
Yeah,
yes.
plumb out.
Like out at,
Match play, it's okay. You don't have to hit from.
remember the junior last year out at
in match play.
Benton Harbor?
But your opponent's allowed to recall the stroke if you play them outside. the
You
tee.
asked an interesting question there. In match play, that even though your side hasn't hit a shot, you've started the hole. There has been a USGA question on that the last 2 years, because in 4-ball, you can join your team between the play of 2 holes, and they always ask this question: You know, you've gotten on the third tee, your partner isn't there, he walks up to the tee, but one of your opponents has hit from the third tee. When can you join? You can't join until the fourth hole because the match has started, the third hole. But that's not true in strip play.
Once anyone tees.
So, yeah, so.
In match play, it's once
in match
anybody,
play,
the match has started, that hole. Yeah.
You got that one right too, didn't
I think so.
All right, key decisions here for Rule 10.
Quick aside, 2-3 years ago, I was refereeing the final match, the Super Seniors match play, down at Grosse Ile. Long, hard day. We get back to 15, neither guy hits the green. Question is, who's away? 3 of us gather at the flag, we decide who's away. They each go back to their ball. I step off the green. One of them looks up and says, well, who did we decide was away? None of us could remember. I told Ken, I said, never again send a Super Senior out with the Super Seniors. We might not find our way home.
Most of them have 15 green.
Where are we going?
True story. It was John Lindholm and the little short guy from Ann Arbor. I forgot his name.
You ought to write that one up.
None of us were listening. You were depending on the other guys. You're going to walk back and then ask. I don't know. Yeah.
Sounds like my bridge group. Whose deal is it?
Any questions about Rule 10? No. Alright, so now we're gonna go to Rule 2. A lot of this early stuff we all know, but we'll go over it really quickly. So a match consists of one side playing against another over a stipulated round unless otherwise decreed by the committee. So in match play, the game is played by holes as opposed to strokes. So 1 up, 1 down, all square. Except as otherwise provided in the rules, a hole is won by the side that holds the ball in fewer strokes, and a handicap match, the lower net score wins the hole. So when we're out there, if we are refereeing a match, one of the things that we'll do is we'll announce the score or the state of the match at the end of the hole. When we're doing that, we want to express it in terms of X holes up or all square, not necessarily someone's never down in a match, someone's always up or it's all square. So we would never say, John Lindholm 2 down. We would say Greg Reynolds 2 up. Something like that.
Less than home, yes.
Yeah. Isn't that normal?
I stand, you're done.
Yeah. So after the play of the hole, if you're a referee out there, let's say you've got 2 players and it's the first hole and they both make pars, they both make 4s. So you'd say, Craig 4, Jack 4, all square through 1. That would be kind of your announcement to go through after the hole. And you would keep doing that until the match is over. You would want to make it loud enough for both players and their caddies to hear, as well as if you have some spectators, it'd be nice to let them know as well. But really, so that the players know where the state of the match is.
For the rookie, I noticed you use first names. Is that normal? You use the first name, or you say Mr.
Did you ever try to pronounce some of these people's last
I mean,
names?
it's really up to you how you want to do it. I mean, I probably use last names more than first names. I just use first names just because.
Well, I'm just super seniors.
It's really up to you. I mean, how you want to do it. I don't think
There's no protocol for.
Yeah.
How do you guys usually do it?
It depends. With the girls, we usually use their I use their last names.
Okay.
And you make sure when you start the match that you find out the correct pronunciation.
Make sure you
We have a lot of those
know.
rules there that
That's my
are
problem.
a number of nationalities where you can look at the name and can't pronounce it. So
There's about 7 of them.
That's
you
when
wanna
the
make
first
sure
name
what the hell you're saying. No different than announcing on it first team.
And you never want to be a starter when Hartman sets up the groupings,
Oh, yeah.
because you'll always have one threesome that you cannot pronounce any of the names.
Oh, yeah. Uh-oh.
I always use it when I start. I usually use the first name of the, when it's the guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just personal preference, Mike. There's no
Yeah.
set way to do it. You just have to signify them one way or the other. First name, last name, nickname if they want. I probably wouldn't do that unless they asked you to do it.
Right. Well, you're a lot younger.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever you feel comfortable doing.
Kind of,
Yeah.
just
both
as an
sides.
aside, you know, if there's, have you read the, proposed changes enough? Have they made any changes regarding any of this stuff that we're talking about? Any proposed, have you,
I haven't.
I just thought about it. I haven't, I just skipped over it when I, saw
Yeah.
it, even when I tried to read
Yeah,
the,
I think for the most part they've left match play alone.
yeah, it's a,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Couple of rules that didn't get touched on.
Yeah.
All right, so the last part here, side is dormy when it has as many holes up or as many holes up as there are holes to be played. So if you're in a situation where, yeah, exactly. So I know Nick Kilday is very adamant on this term and really not using it, but I know a lot of people like to use it to give them a hard time. But it's not necessarily in the rules how it is. There's no thing saying that. It just says that there's as many holes up as there are holes remaining to be played. So if you have your matches continuing over to the first hole, which are the majority, actually I think all of our matches are, it's dormy is probably maybe not the best term to use. But if you were playing a Ryder Cup match where you can end in a tie, dormy is an appropriate word to use. But
It's because they all use 18-hole match.
right.
They don't play till there's one.
Right.
Mm.
So
You could
it's
say that
something that
you
you
have
can
to-
say. I mean, so you could say, after hole 15, someone's jack is 3 up through 15 and dormy or something like that.
3 up to 3 to play.
Just dormy 3.
Right. So yeah, I mean, you definitely can say it. It comes from the Latin to sleep. So it just means that you really can't really do it.
Like one of my players just said, sleep out here.
It's not on that sheet. Where did you get that? Where'd you look?
I learned that.
You've been
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
At the seminary?
That was the rule.
No, yeah, I don't know any Latin, but except for that word. But if you know Spanish too, like dormir is to sleep, which just comes from that. It derives from
It's interesting.
from Latin.
Yeah, Kyle, it's the same as the word dormitory.
There you go. Yeah, that's. Thanks for that, John. That's,
Now we got
I didn't know that. So that's
He wasn't asleep. That's good.
yeah.
Some of us are old enough that they still taught Latin in high school.
Right.
Yeah. I had 3 years of it. Yeah.
All right, so a halved hole, this is fairly straightforward, right? But a hole is halved when each side pulls out with the same number of strokes. So the only kind of little kink to this one is that when a player has holed out and his opponent has been left with the stroke for half, the player subsequently incurs a penalty if the hole is half. So there's a decision that kind of goes over this situation here, decision 2-2/1. Which we'll show here. So the following is an example of the application of the second paragraph of Rule 2-2. In a match, A has holed out. As B, A's opponent is preparing to putt for a half, A gives B advice as to his line of putt. A would normally lose the hole for a breach of 8-1, but Rule 2-2 becomes operative in these circumstances and the hole is halved.
But it's important to note that it doesn't apply in 4-ball.
Somebody goes out to French dorm.
That's why I didn't make a related decision down there.
That's what we said anyway.
Right?
Yep.
Who knows if they're
Oh.
right.
Okay,
So it doesn't
Too much for me to
apply in
remember.
4-ball because there's other people in the
I'm
match.
assuming it's to sleep anyway.
Strategy.
yep,
Okay.
All right, so the winner is when one side leads by more than the number of holes is left, right? So the last part here, if there's a tie, the committee can extend the stipulated round by as many holes as required for the match to be completed. So in all of our match play events, we're going to continue it on to the first hole or some other hole. It could be the 10th hole. It could be any hole that the committee decides. But typically, you'll go back to the first hole and you'll keep playing until there's a winner. So you could play one hole. It could take 6 holes to finish the match. It could take even more than that. I know last year at the boys junior, we had one match go, I think, 25 holes. And that was a person that was volunteering for the very first time and walking with his first match. And he happened to get the 25-hole match. So, but hey, he was a trooper and he hung in there the entire time. So, whereas others, like we mentioned, a Ryder Cup, it doesn't go on, but beyond the first hole, you get a half point for a half, and that's just where it ends. All right, so concessions. So as we all learned over time, we need more, and this is something that we'll tell players in the first tee during match play. We need to make sure that concessions are loud and clear so everyone can hear, players, caddies, etc. So there's no confusion as to if a putt was good or not. And we run the Solheim Cup situation like they had a couple of years ago, which was crazy. But anyways, so the player may concede a match at any time prior to the start or conclusion of that match. And so any time there. The player can concede a hole at any time prior to the start or conclusion of that hole. So if you hit your first shot out of bounds and the other player already hit and they're 2 feet from the hole, that player can concede the hole. They don't have to wait until they hit more shots than this player makes or anything like that. They can concede it whenever. During prior to the start of the hole or the conclusion of that hole.
Is any play after the concession by the opponent counted as practice?
No, so there's a decision in there, and I think I might have it. But it basically says that the continuation of play during let's see, here it is. Strokes made in continuing to play the hole, the result of which has been decided are not practice strokes. So that's decision 7-2/1.7.
7-2.
So in that case, you would be able to play out. That's fine, and that would be considered practice.
People can do it. Instead of they playing it there.
Finish the hole.
Finish the round.
That doesn't necessarily apply if the match is over. If it's over, the committee can tell the players that they can't keep playing. So if they finish on the 15th hole, the committee may say, once you're finished, you need to come in. You can't continue to play 16, 17, 18, even though your match is over. But if I were to concede the first hole to you, Charles, because I hit 7 out of bounds, and you wanted to keep playing the hole, you could. That's not a problem.
But if the committee doesn't say anything, then they can.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure.
I haven't been out there in the Michigan Am in a couple of years, but do any of these players just go pick up the other player's ball and hand it to them as a means of concession? Because that is not a concession.
No, still got to say.
I mean, on decision 2-4/4, it's actually a penalty. And I would sure hate to penalize a player for, just scooping up the opponent's ball from 2 inches from the hole and handing it to him.
But I mean, that player wants to concede the hole anyways, right? So if you just add a stroke to their hole, they're just gonna say, okay, I can.
No,
right?
not necessarily.
You disqualify.
If you putt up for
Okay,
a
you're
3,
saying that the person that's winning gives them the ball.
it doesn't matter whether the person is winning or losing. If you putt up and leave a 2-inch, I just go over and scoop it up and throw it to you.
Yeah.
You know, that is not a concession. That's a penalty stroke.
He calls him.
He didn't have to call. If I'm refereeing, that's a
Oh,
penalty
if you're
stroke.
refereeing, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't like that. I think that's a
Can you
bad
say that's
decision.
good and then
Well,
hit
but you tell
If
them
you
that
say
on-
that's good, then that's
before
fine.
you hit it?
Yeah.
But you also tell them that when you're starting, don't you? on the first
Well,
tee?
that's why I was going there. I think that would be a good idea.
Yes,
That if they're going to make a concession, it has to be verbal.
and loud and clear so
And
that
loud
you, the
and clear.
referee, can hear it.
Yeah.
Until 2018.
That when all hell breaks loose.
You know, and the same thing goes for picking up a ball marker or something like that too, correct?
There's
Which
a
is that
decision
next
right beyond
decision says that.
4-5.
I don't understand 2/1/5 or 2-1/5. It's saying two different things in my mind. There's no penalty if they play 3 holes out of sequence and the whole stand is played. If the players were to replay the 3 holes in proper sequence, there would be no penalty and the 3 holes would stand as replayed. They're saying two different things. They're saying, number one, so who makes that decision? The 2 players?
Yeah.
Players would.
They
Or
both play the same hole.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still just
They're
well, if
saying
one
that-
guy loses,
It kind of gets to the point where in match play you can pretty much do almost anything. And
18-5.
it'd be okay. I mean that's more of a situation that that you would see when just 2 guys are out there or 2 ladies out there just playing a match and there's no referee.
Okay.
If there's a referee, you're gonna help.
well, if you won 2 holes and
Right.
the opponent won 1, you wouldn't want to replay them.
You're not gonna agree to that, right?
Okay. But if the only way they would agree is if they were tied. I don't
Well,
understand why they would.
I mean, let's say that they play 3 holes out of order, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh hey, we just played 3 holes out of order, and then let's go back and play the right holes in the order, and they keep playing, and then in that case, since they agreed to go back and play over, they can continue to play.
Well,
I mean, that would be a situation. Maybe they didn't care about necessarily who was up, but they would say maybe our match wouldn't count if we don't go back and fix it. Even though that's not the case, they may think that and do that. And in that case, you just the whole stand as replayed and not.
Because neither one of them made a claim that they wanted the rules applied and the facts that they understood them. So
Right.
life goes on.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So a player may concede his opponent's next stroke at any time, provided the opponent's ball is at rest. So as long as the ball is at rest, you can concede the next stroke. Once you do that, the opponent is considered to have holed out with his next stroke, and the ball may be removed by either side. So one example that you'll see in there is the ball overhanging the hole. So in that case, the player is still allowed 10 seconds to determine whether that ball is at rest. And the ball may be overhanging the hole, because as you might recall in Rule 16, if that ball is on the edge there, the player is given a reasonable amount of time to walk up to the hole, and then 10 seconds from that point to determine if the ball either falls in or it doesn't. If it falls in, within those 10 seconds, then it's deemed hold. But if it is still there after 10 seconds, then it's deemed at rest. And so a player couldn't say, it goes up there and it's on the hole, oh, that's good, before waiting the 10 seconds. They need to wait to determine if that ball is at rest, but it's not at rest.
It's not at rest either if it's out of play. Right? If you get your ball marker down, the ball's in your pocket, the ball is not in play. But the marker's there, so the ball's not at rest. But the ball's position is marked.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. But it came to rest and you marked it, so yeah. But no,
So if somebody concedes it before it's at rest, does the player just confirm it once it is at rest, or is it just he's talking to himself and it never happened?
Yeah, you would just ask the player, is it good or something like that after it came to rest. That's a good question, because yeah, that wouldn't be a valid concession if they said it before the ball came to rest, if it was still moving. And the last one here on the bottom, concession may not be declined or withdrawn. So that was mentioned earlier by Tom. So you can never take it back. Once you say it, it's good. And there's quite a few decisions in there about when there's some confusion about where players are in terms of how many strokes they made and picking up balls and coins and markers, as Gene referenced. So I think the one she said 2-4/4. Right?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
That was a good one to reference. 2-4/3 is another one. So in a match between A and B, B made a statement which A interpreted to mean that his A's next stroke was conceded. Accordingly, A lifted his ball. B then said that he had not conceded A's stroke. What is the ruling? So if B's statement could reasonably have led A to think that his next stroke had been conceded in equity, A should replace his ball as near as possible to where it lie without penalty. Otherwise, A would incur a penalty stroke for lifting his ball without marking his position, and he must replace his ball as near as possible to where it lay. So it's clear that we're making it. It's clear that we're making it, or that the players need to make it clear when is a stroke conceded and when it isn't. So loud and clear concessions, so that everyone can hear and there's no misunderstanding. A couple other ones that you guys can look over later I have here: 2-4/6 and 2-4/7. All right, so now we're going to get to claims. So this is going to be, again, something that you'll see more in a match without a referee. As we'll go over to the end, there's 3 times where you don't really need a claim, and one of those is when a referee is present. So if a referee, as in the majority of our match play events, will have a referee with the groups, then there won't need to be this claim process. But the claim process comes more into place when you're dealing with matches at your club or your course where there is no referee out there. So if there's doubt as to how to proceed between the players can make a claim. They may make a claim. So if no duly authorized representative of the committee is available within a reasonable time, the players must continue the match without delay. So the committee may consider a claim only if it has been made in a timely manner, and if the player making the claim has notified his opponent at the time that he is making a claim and wants a ruling, and of what he wants to make a ruling about, or the facts upon which the claim is going to be based. So he needs to essentially say, I'm going to make a claim that how you're proceeding is not correct, in reference to maybe dropping 3 club links from a cart path instead of find the nearest point of relief and dropping 1. So we need to reference that they want to make a claim and what they're wanting to make a claim about. The players made themselves to decide that's oh yeah, that's fine. Like, I think that's right, and that's totally fine. They don't need to make a claim in that case. If there's no doubt and they just agree on to do something, whether it's right or wrong, that's okay. And a claim is considered to be made in a timely manner if, upon discovery of circumstances giving rise to the claim, the player makes his claim before any player in the match plays from the next team ground. In the case of the last hole of the match, before all players in the match leave the putting green. So that's how we determine whether it's timely. And then also, when the circumstances giving rise to the claim are discovered, after all the players in the match have left the putting green of the final hole, before the result of the match has been officially announced. So this could be, you could have a situation where you find out about something that happened a few holes later, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you could still make a claim in that case as well. not necessarily just on the hole that you just finished, or on the hole that you're playing. Okay, so a claim relating to a prior hole in the match may only be considered by the committee if it's based on facts previously unknown to the player making the claim, and he or she has been giving wrong information by an opponent. So, and if that's the case, if you have facts previously unknown and the player had been given wrong information, you can make a claim for a hole or something that happened prior in the match. In order to do that in a timely manner, you need to do that right away. Again, it's still going to be by the end of that hole that you find out about it, or sorry, before you hit a tee shot on the next hole when you find out about it, or in this is the last hole before the players leave the green. So once the result of the match has been officially announced, a claim may not be considered unless it's based on facts that were previously unknown to the player. The player making the claim has been given wrong information by the opponent, and the opponent intentionally gave wrong information and knew that they were giving wrong information. So this is after the fact, after the results have been announced. So you have to have all three of these situations.
Basically, the player was cheating.
Right.
Essentially, yep.
I'm sorry,
Players cheat? I don't think so.
you need all three of those, or you just one
You
of
need
them?
all three of these for the committee to consider a claim after the results have been announced.
Player making the claim had been given wrong information by the opponent. And you said, and the opponent knew he was
Yes. Yeah. So it'd be a situation where you said that I didn't incur this penalty on the hole, but the player knew that they took relief from the hazard, but they just didn't tell their fellow or their opponent about it. So that would be something where and then this player or this just came to light after the results had already been announced. That would be a situation where there was intent to deceive the player, and it was not known to the player ahead of time that this happened. So, and there is no time limit on considering such a claim. So this could happen, this could happen for something in a match that was a couple days ago potentially, and you would still
like sitting in the bar.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
You're talking to your buddy about what you did.
Fast one.
All right, and then this is all for 2-5, but the note one here: a player may disregard a breach of the rules by his opponent, provided there is no agreement by the sides to waive a rule. So if you're playing with someone and you see them ground or call it a hazard, you don't necessarily have to call them on it. You can just not say anything, and there's no agreement to waive the rules there. But you couldn't say something along the lines of, that's a penalty, but I'm not going to call it on you. And then that player knows it's a penalty.
Don't let it happen
You can't.
again.
Yeah, exactly. So once you acknowledge that you know the rule and that you say something about it, then you have to follow through with that claim. But you can just sit there and say nothing, and it'd be okay. Or the players can agree to do something wrong, as long as they're not doing something wrong against the rules to break the rules intentionally. They're okay. So if they think that they don't take a penalty stroke when dropping from a hazard, that's okay if they're just doing it because they don't know the rules. If a player is doubtful of their rights, he cannot play two balls. So Rule 3-3 does not apply for match play. You need to decide what you want to do, and then if the player or opponent disagrees with it, they need to make a claim, or you come together and make a decision on what you want to do to proceed. So here's a overview of for how a claim is to be valid. So decision 2-5/2. For a claim to be valid, the claimant must notify his opponent that he is making a claim or wants a ruling and the facts of the situation. He must do so within the time required by Rule 2-5. For example, Rule 16-1E prohibits putting from a stance astride an extension of the line of putt behind the ball. In a match between A and B, if A putts from the stance astride an extension of the line and B states that it's not allowed, you are penalized, or I'm making a claim because of that stroke, the committee should consider the claim. Statements by B such as I'm not sure that's allowed or I don't think you can do that do not by themselves constitute a valid claim because each statement does not contain the notice of a claim or that he wants a ruling in the facts of the situation. So again, you have to make when you're making that claim, it has to be I'm making this claim and because of this. I think this is wrong. I'm making a claim because what you're doing is wrong. And it has to be done in a timely manner. So going back to, I'll throw it up here so you guys can reference it. All right. So we've got a couple situations here. I'm going to quiz you guys. So we have an incident that occurred during the fourth hole, and the opponent discovers the circumstances during the fourth hole. When do they need to make the claim in order for it to be made in a timely manner?
Before they play on the fifth.
Before they play on the fifth. Okay, perfect. So now we got one during the play of the fourth hole. The opponent discovers this issue during the ninth hole. When do they need to make this claim in order for it to be made in a timely manner?
As soon as it's discovered.
14 off and
10th hole.
The 14 off on number 10.
Right.
Yep. Okay, what about, you have the same, it happened on the fourth hole, but this time you find out about it between the play of the ninth and the 10th holes.
Between?
So you find out about it because you're walking between 9 and 10 and you guys are talking and you find out that this player grounded their club in a hazard.
Before you tee off.
before you tee off.
Before you tee off on 10, yep. What about, let's see, during the fourth play of the hole, this issue comes up again, and then the opponent finds out about it after the match has been announced. And we're assuming that they were given wrong information and they were given it intentionally.
Knowingly.
Knowingly?
No. Yeah,
Then there's no statute of limitations.
All those three things, yeah.
It's got to be 3 criteria.
Yeah.
exactly. So it's always that whole, your next hole, once you find out about it before you tee off on that next hole, that's when, unless you have a situation where there was some intent to deceive.
They were cheating.
Exactly.
Out of the bar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The last time before you leave the green.
Exactly. So like the last hole it's before you leave the green.
Yeah.
And let's say we're on the last hole and let's say the breach happened on the fourth hole and you find out about it as you're walking off the last green or as you're walking to the clubhouse. When do you need to make that claim?
Before you sign your cards. Before you switch your card.
You don't need to sign a card, man.
You don't need a card match.
Committee, yeah.
Before the
Sign the committee.
Before it's announced.
Yep.
Before it's announced.
Yep, exactly. Before the match is announced, you need to make that claim.
Now, Kyle, all these claims in match play, when there's a referee, the committee is not, it's almost a moot point.
Exactly.
Correct? Because the
Exactly.
referees makes the final decision on the spot.
Exactly.
Right.
So
The committee's agent.
That's why
I'm
you have
sorry?
a radio.
The committee's agent when you're out there.
Okay,
the
yes.
referee.
So yeah, so exactly, Mike. When there's a referee that's assigned to a match, there's no need for claims. The claim isn't necessary.
Right, they
You're
can't
gonna
go
be there.
override you
Mhm.
to the
Right.
committee.
Yep. Your decision's final.
even if you were wrong.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
So there's 3 instances where a claim isn't necessary. So Mike just mentioned one when there's a referee assigned to a match. The other one is if there's a committee member that's readily available. So if you have someone, you might have someone that's assigned to a match, but if the committee member's out there on the course and they need someone, they can wave them over and the person can intervene there.
How readily is he got to be? As long as you're delaying play.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to continue your match, right? So if you try to get a hold of someone and after a minute you couldn't find anyone, then you have to kind of come to a conclusion or move forward, and then one person or the other makes a claim. And then the last one is if you and your opponent agree on how to proceed. If you guys agree, on how to go forward, you don't need to make a claim because you're just agreeing to do it, whether it's right or wrong. That's going to be okay, as long as there's no rules infraction under 1-3.
I think an important little thing in here about for the later claim to be considered, it has to be based on facts unknown. Say I'm playing a match with Kyle and we're on the third hole and I have a ball in the bunker and I get in there and take a practice swing and blast sand all over the place and he's standing there watching me. Doesn't say anything at the time. 2 holes later, he cannot claim.
No, because he observed.
He saw me do it and he said nothing then. So he can't claim it later.
No, so that's a good point. Because
Even if he didn't know the rule.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
well, if they didn't know it, then
Let's say he gets
would
his book
that
out.
change things? I mean,
Well, no,
let's say that
If
I
you
don't
see
know.
it, it's not wrong information, which you need as well.
Well, I didn't add any penalty to my score. That's the wrong information.
Right.
So that's been met, but the fact that he is not facts previously unknown, so he cannot claim it later
No, he observed.
because he saw me do it. Just because he didn't know it was wrong, that's not my problem, that's his problem.
In that case,
That's the way I read it.
neither of you knew the rules.
Well, I did, but I decided to break them.
Yeah. Okay.
You knew I was a dummy. So,
So she did it right to your face.
yeah, right.
I said, take this, Kyle.
Rub your nose in the sand.
All right, so the general penalty, so penalty for breach of match play is going to be loss of hole, except for these 17/18 situations.
Stuff's on the website.
That you can see it's. Craig, we have this on.
Yeah.
In the,
Under the volunteer page.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
As a resource.
Still,
And even though it says 2012, it's still accurate as far as I look through it. Everything still applies. And I think this was put together by Lee Blakey, I believe.
Who?
Yeah, I believe
He's the guy they always have in the pictures of the rules officials.
You did?
And he's got a
Oh,
floppy
thanks,
hat and a
anyway.
goofy mustache. He just looks like a guy that's out there to be a rules official. He's also hugely knowledgeable.
Yeah.
so he's skinny and slugger is not.
You can have
Could
it.
call it, you
I
know,
got
some
another-
call it a spear, some call it
I got
a.
another.
I got one.
So all these
There's other
situations
stuff on
up
the other
here
side.
are ones where the player is not going to get a lost ball penalty, and they're just going to get 1 stroke,
Single most important thing.
which could lead to losing the hole, but it's not an
It's a single
automatic
most
loss of hole.
important.
All right, key decisions here for Rule 2.
That's why I do this.
I gotta get over tired. That's why you put them there. Glad you know which ones they were.
Good?
Mhm.
All right, so any questions about Rule 2? All right. So number 9, information as to strokes taken. So the number of strokes a player's taken includes any penalty strokes. Obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
In match play, information is stroke taken. An opponent is entitled to ascertain from the player during the play of the hole the number of strokes he has taken, which includes those penalty strokes, and after play of the hole, the number of strokes taken on the hole just completed. So you can ask for that at any point in time. Now, a player must not give wrong information to his opponent, including information about his score. If the player gives wrong information, he loses the hole. player has been deemed to give wrong information if he fails to inform his opponent as soon as practical that he has incurred a penalty, unless he was obviously proceeding under a rule involving a penalty and this was observed by the player or the opponent. So if you're taking relief from a hazard and I'm standing there watching you, you don't need to tell me that you're getting a penalty. I know that, or hopefully I know that, if I know the rules. And then also, if you correct your mistake about getting wrong information before your opponent makes his next stroke. So if you say I'm line 4, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh no, I'm line 5. If you tell that player or your opponent that before they hit, it's okay. You're not deemed to be giving wrong information.
As long as it's not halfway through your backswing.
Exactly. Well, I mean, if
Still time.
backswing is still, you're right. Backswing is still time. You know your definitions well.
Not a stroke yet.
And the stroke has been made.
All right, so what as soon as practical means, that's going to be decision 9-2/1, which will show up here on the screen. So 9-2/1. So rule 9-2B requires a player who has incurred a penalty to inform his opponent as soon as practical. This phrase is purposely broad so as to allow for consideration of circumstances in each situation, especially the proximity of the player to his opponent. Thus, informing the opponent as soon as practical of a penalty incurred does not, in all circumstances, mean that the player must do so before the opponent plays his next stroke. So you could be, 40 yards on the opposite side of the hole, dealing with your hazard relief, where the other player is way on the other side of the hole. You don't need to run all the way over and tell this player before they hit or tell your opponent before they hit the shot that you just incurred a penalty. It's just as soon as practical. And in that case, if you told them after you hit the shot, after they hit the shot and you're walking up, that would be okay. But if we're within close proximity, you need to tell them right away if they ask.
Don't you have to tell him
Well, I mean, yeah.
if he didn't know?
Sure.
So he doesn't have to ask. It's not a.
Yeah,
You tell him as soon as you did it.
correct.
As soon as you meet up, you have to tell them.
Yes. Yeah, for penalties, you
Okay.
need to. You wouldn't need to tell them how many strokes you would hit unless
Yeah.
they ask.
You
but-
incurred a penalty,
Right. if you
and that
incurred a
was
penalty.
Does anybody
was
know
unknown,
if there's any such word as
supposedly.
practicable? I don't
There
think
has to
so.
be.
I think it's practical. I don't think there's any such word as practical.
I didn't know how to say it, but I think.
No,
I think
no.
that's right.
That's what they printed is practical.
Practicable. Yes, it's always been that. But then again, when you skull a shot, they spell that as
I mean, I don't know that this is the
SKULL
world's best dictionary, but it came back no search unsatisfied.
instead of SC.
Do they?
Oh, yeah.
Scott, they're pirates, eh?
They were highly incensed when I wanted
Able to be
that.
done or used, according to Merriam-Webster.
What is it?
It says practicable, able to be done or used. That's according to Merriam-Webster.
Oh, well, that's not.
I'll stand by practical.
Good old
as the right
Merriam.
word.
So yeah, it's a legitimate word.
Webster says it's real. So it's real. All right. So going back to this, so a player is deemed to be given wrong information. The second thing is they give incorrect information during the play of the hole regarding the number of strokes taken and does not correct the mistake before his opponent makes the next stroke. Or gives incorrect information regarding the number of strokes taken to complete a hole, and this affects the opponent's understanding of the result unless he corrects this mistake before the player makes a stroke in the next team round, or in the case of the last hole before all players leave the putting green. So again, if you say, if they asked you what your opponent asked you how many strokes you took, and you said 4, if you actually took 5, as long as you corrected them before they played, then that would be fine.
But there's that little clause in there, and this affects the opponent's understanding. So we're on the third tee, and you've just won the second hole, and you ask me what I took, and I tell you 5, and then I say, no, it was 6. You'd still won the hole. So it hasn't changed anything. So it doesn't matter if I get it corrected timely. because you've already, it doesn't change the understanding of the result.
Right. So if I made 7 and Jean said she made a 5, and then she says, oh, actually I made a 6.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter because she beat me either way. Okay, and then a player is given wrong information, even if it is due to the failure to include a penalty that he did not know he had incurred. So it's the player's responsibility to know the rules. So if you didn't know that it was 2 strokes for grounding your club in a bunker, or taking a practice in a bunker, you would be deemed to be given wrong information if that came to light later on. If the player didn't see it or something like that, that would be considered wrong information. If you didn't let them know about penalty stroke, your score would be affected by that. So, and if you guys are referees out there, I mean, obviously you guys can assist with this process. It's not, doesn't always have to be between the players. So if a player, if someone were to ask, what does he lie? If the player, you can answer for the player. So if player B asks you what player A is lying, you can answer that. You can help with that. You can help notify of penalties that happen that may be in a place where they might not be able to see it or something like that. So,
but if you're a marker and you're not the referee, but you're out there as an observer, I guess that's, is your obligation to tell the referee or bring it to somebody's attention if you see something that is wrong?
If there is a referee, yes.
Yeah.
If
If
there
there
isn't
is
a
a
referee, no.
if you're an observer to help the referee,
Right.
as a,
But if there's no referee for that match, then you just move along.
Let her ride.
yeah, you don't get involved unless there's a rule 1-3, if there's an agreement to play the rules, or there's undue delay, or there's a serious infraction with etiquette or something like that. That would result in a DQ or something like that. Yeah.
Through the club and hit your opponent.
That's right.
You're just there to help.
Exactly. All right. Couple of key decisions here for information as the stroke's taken.
I think the fact that they didn't mess with these 2 rules leads me to believe they think they have match play, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about the only 2 rules that didn't get us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or as I could say,
Well, maybe they're not done yet.
we don't even know where to be.
Yeah.
This is phase 1.
Face.
Things that the other shoe to drop.
Has anybody ever found out if any of the existing decisions will carry over into the new handbook
Oh,
and
God.
just be renumbered? Or if all decisions just go away?
Wait,
They're all
wait,
going
wait,
away.
wait,
It says that some of the stuff will be in there, but it'll be in paragraph form, not in question and answer form.
Oh,
Really?
So, yeah. So
It's
that
in the
means
handbook.
in the
it's
handbook.
It's up until interpretation, right? Now you have-
I don't know how they're going to do that.
Yeah, it's not a yes or no. It's a maybe.
They'll start submitting and then redo decisions. to the new handbook.
I don't know how they're going to deal with that. Who knows?
Next year's.
Oh, Marco.
On the 29th.
But we're not gonna ask
Except
him.
Mark
No,
isn't
Mark-
on the committee anymore.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh,
Mm.
So then who
So-
is?
Well, I know only one person that's on the committee, and I just spent too much time asking her about the 1-inch drop rule. I wasted all my time.
You're only allowed so many questions. And
I could only collar her for a short time.
All right,
Now
so-
I understand the 1-inch after hearing about the 20 inches.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because you want to keep it within that.
In that
area.
little tiny triangle,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. But you're not dropping it here. You can keep it in that
Yeah,
20-inch
makes sense to me
spot.
now.
And it, right.
So everybody has a little carpenter's tape to put in their bag, right? They just
A T, it's all. Mark the T.
All right, so rule 34, disputes and decisions.
Yeah.
So for match play, claims and penalties, if the claim is live with the committee under Rule 2-5, a decision should be given as soon as possible, but the state of the match may, if necessary, be adjusted. If the claim is not made in accordance with Rule 2-5, it must not be considered by the committee. So, and then the one exception to that is that there is no time limit on applying the disqualification penalty for breach rule of Rule 1-3, so the agreement to waive rules. So as soon as possible, we want to get this information to them ASAP so they can adjust the match, so we don't have a situation where we don't know the state of the match or where it stands, as we're waiting on a ruling from the committee. As we mentioned, the majority of our match play events will all have referees walking or riding referees with matches. So, getting back or getting referred to the committee is not really going to take all that long. But you may have an event, let's say of the senior women's amateur, where they don't want rules officials out there or walking referees. They may come to us on the ninth hole with something, and we need to be able to give that an answer to them as soon as possible so that they know how their match actually stands going down the stretch.
Like in the Michigan Amateur, don't we
the net
use
match.
observers in the first set of match play?
No, we have a match, we have a
We got
official
referees for
The
all
net
32 matches?
We don't have,
We don't ever have enough.
right,
Well-
we don't have an official for a
We have-
referee for every match. You might have one
Do they have
that is assigned to cover these 2 or 3,
You
but
don't
that's,
have, you don't have referees until the semifinals.
Right.
That's what I thought.
so,
Did you have 8 last year? You didn't have 8, you probably had 4
referee for each match.
for the
which
semifinals, for the
net
the
match,
match play.
the net match play.
You probably didn't have 8,
No,
probably
We
had
did,
4.
we only had
So semifinals you
Yeah.
started.
so
So,
again, we are gonna have
yeah, so there's-
match
there's-
play
there's some
events
not-
where you're gonna
some
have-
not ones.
Yep, nobody.
nobody.
But if you people in this room would show up for those things, that is more fun.
I know.
I mean, you stay busy the whole time.
Absolutely, you get a, those are fun, because you get,
You have to walk, right?
I agree.
The net match play is different than seed.
Then my walk.
Right.
No, you don't have to walk, you can ride in the
We
car.
were told yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
But the net-
You can ride in the car for the net match.
I didn't do it.
Oh, net
Match.
The match is-
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
Players are right.
Hmm?
Players are right.
Players right in the net.
Yeah, yeah,
And the net, the senior, yeah.
But the regular match play, you can't.
I don't know.
No, it
You mean,
wasn't.
you mean Michigan AM?
Yes.
No, you can't ride.
It's
Oh,
strongly
no.
frowned upon.
Now, the
Hey, I wore shorts, that was frowned upon, but I still did it.
Say again? But
Not on purpose.
You got sent home. You got-
So Ted just went,
In matches where the players are walking, we typically require or strongly suggest that the official
referee walks with them, yes.
Now, I mean, there could be a situation where it's a 36-hole day and we need one other person and that person's not gonna be able to walk, we'll probably let them ride.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's done it. We had a couple
Done it.
times with the boys junior.
Yeah.
Last year where, I mean, it wasn't the best.
People were relieved. The referees still walk, but they,
I don't think so. I think
we did
I
get
think
some.
we had Mr. MK took a card for one of them.
MK.
Okay.
TK's brother.
Carlos?
Carlos.
So,
Carlos is
He-
ready?
He always
I've
walked.
seen Miguel
Yes.
for rides between holes, maybe,
Well,
read
the
it.
playoff
He listens to
cartoon.
us. I mean,
Ooh, right.
typically we will walk. There's exceptions. I mean, if you really wanted to work something, I mean, Michigan AM is probably not going to happen. Women's AM probably not going to happen. But if we were short officials and you really wanted to work something, but that was the reason that you wouldn't want to, I would suggest talking to Craig or Ken to see if that's possible.
Senior women's, you can walk, I mean, we could ride, senior women's.
Did I hear you say the senior women doesn't want referees?
No,
Just show
They
them.
really asked me
I
if they
did
wanted
the
to have a
senior
referee for the final matches, and they just said no.
Juniors are gonna be walking for the most part.
Well, you You have to have
Which
cards
I
to
mean, it's
keep up
fine.
with
man.
them.
That's their
Did
prerogative.
you send one, or
Two
did
did move.
they didn't have one, they just did it?
Not to
They came in and told you what
It's
the
not
results
necessarily
were.
their
Well, the
prerogative.
changes-
We could have required that someone walk with them, but at that point, it's like, just let it
Oh,
go.
oh, this is the match play, not
Yeah.
the one up north.
Match.
Yeah.
And you
I
wrote
was in the
cards.
car.
Right.
Then after about the first hole, we started getting our cards.
I remember that.
All right, so like I said, we want to make this decision as soon as possible. And the penalty of disqualification must be imposed after the competition is closed if a competitor does one of the following: was in breach of Rule 1-3, agreement to waive the rules, returned a scorecard on which he or she had recorded a handicap that was higher, or that they knew was higher than that to which they were entitled to, and this affected the number of strokes received. They returned a score for any hole lower than they actually took for any reason other than failure to include a penalty that before the competition closed, he or she did not know they had incurred. So if they, just wrote down 4 and they really made 5 and they let you know after, that they're still going to be disqualified. And then they knew before the competition was closed that they had been in breach of any other rule for which the penalty is disqualification. So if they used a non-conforming club and they knew that, and they just didn't get caught, if we found out about that after, we would DQ them. Or if what happened in the 4-ball last year, we had professional play in that, and we had to disqualify the player after the fact. So that would be, I know this is match play, but that's an example where we had to act after the fact the competition was announced because of something that is a disqualification. Okay, so here, as we referenced, if the referee has been appointed to the match or by the committee, their decision is final. So, Jerry, even if it's wrong, it's final. In the absence of a referee, any dispute will be referred to the committee, and their decision is final. And if that doesn't satisfy the players or the people playing, then, or if the committee can't come to a decision, they can refer the dispute to the USGA, and their decision is final. And if you don't agree with their decision, too bad.
Greg, do you have any kind of a policy when you've got referees in the amateur? If a referee makes a decision out there and both of the players are asking for a second opinion, I always
would
offered
say,
it.
I always offer it. If there's a
Okay.
big dispute, I will get Hartman on the phone and put them on the speakerphone so they can hear the dialogue going back
Okay,
and forth.
even though this says.
Even though my decision's final, I'm positive this is true, they still contest it. I'm not gonna try to, get overly burdensome on them. I'm gonna say, okay, I'll get someone else.
Okay.
And that situation may happen. Let's say that we have, myself watching last year. You got 2 guys that have been playing forever, and they're not, and they don't feel comfortable taking that from me. If I were to get Ken on the phone and they feel more comfortable getting it from Ken, and that's fine too.
Although Ken doesn't know the rules probably as well as most people out there.
But still,
I trust Ken.
Yeah, well, exactly. They're more familiar with them, and if the player feels more comfortable hearing it from someone else, then that's fine. It's not. You can look at it as they don't trust you or whatever. That could be true, but just giving the players the option to feel more comfortable hearing it from a different source is never a bad thing. Stroke play or match play.
Put it in perspective. If you don't want to hear from your kids, your wife will tell you.
Just get the okay,
You guys are all so enlightened. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I've had them just refuse to believe me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I got Larry Walker, don't you remember? I got in that argument with him at the senior match play that year.
Oh, God.
Dottie Pepper was your baby.
Initiate stuff.
No, it was after dealing with a bunch of guys for 14 years in the Michigan Amateur that they gave me Dottie. They said, if you can handle those guys. No, they refused to believe me in the Michigan AM for the first few years. Absolutely refused to do anything I told them out there.
For a reason that,
I was female.
Yeah,
really,
Yeah.
for sure. It still happens now.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
not with Jeannie it does.
Not anymore.
You said 9 iron she carries in a purse for collapse and she have to back them in the knee.
All right, so then if it does get risen to this point where the USGA needs to get involved, there's some process that it gets sent over, I don't know, nice fancy letter to the USGA, and they write back or give us a decision, and then we can give that to a player. So that this could happen too at the club level. The club level has a question and they don't feel satisfactory with how it was decided. They can write to the USGA, and the USGA will get back to them in not a timely manner, more than likely, but they will get back to them with a decision.
In the meantime, if it's a tournament,
If it's a tournament, then let's say that we don't know the answer.
right,
We're going to call the USGA and get them on the phone. And if they can't give us an answer, then we're just going to make a decision one way or the other.
right. So, I mean, there's a decision right then, that
Sure.
day, let's say,
Yeah.
instead of waiting for the USGA
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
to
Yeah.
reply.
Yeah. We're not going to send them.
You still might send them something,
Sure.
just,
Sure. After the fact, and this is kind of how these decisions happen, right? I mean, there's certain things that aren't explained by the rules, or there's some gray areas, and they get sent in, and then that's how they
Yeah,
get
those questions become a decision.
right.
Am I right that the Michigan section of the PGA no longer requires its members to certify and recertify knowledge of the rules?
I don't know. I mean, I know that
Because that's scary. Those are the people that
Yeah.
make club decisions, which is where
Yeah.
people learn the rules. And if they don't have to
right.
recertify, but they give you an answer in authoritative voice.
I'm not sure if they're required to. I don't think they're required to, but they are given strong incentives to go. So they're given 24 MSRP or whatever the things are. MSRP is something else, but they're given like 24 points, which is a lot more than you would get going to some other places. So it's strongly encouraged, and based on the rules classes that I've been to, they've been close to 50% pros, if not more.
How many points do they get for going to that Mark Wilson clinic on the 24th? You know,
I want to say it's like 6 or
6 hours, 6 hours, 6 points.
6 hours.
6 hours. They do need to get so many certification hours per year, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yes. But they can get those in different ways. I think there's certain categories that they have to hit, but I'm not sure if rules is necessarily under one of them. It could be rules/tournaments. If you're a running tournament, they may count that as well. Or serving on the rules committee of the tournament.
Is there a score requirement for them?
No, not for pros. If you're working, some PGA championships or PGA type events, they do have score requirements for that, but not to just be a club pro or whatever.
Well, there's some club pros that they play almost every tournament just to keep it up.
Sure, yeah, and most of the people that are in charge of the PGA or on the PGA rules committee, they've been club pros. So the guy that's in top of it now, Tom Karpus, he's a pro at a club in Philadelphia. So they're not just people that kind of specialize in the rules like a Mark Wilson per se. Not that he
was a club
I guess
pro.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was a club pro at
Watermark.
for like 30 years. So he's not one now, but there are a lot of people that are on the rules committee and work the championships that are club pros, head pros.
Yeah, he's dangerous now. He's a professor in Ferris.
Yeah.
Oh, in the golf school.
Just teaching rules,
No, I've talked to him about that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have, they don't
They don't
have
rules
enough
class.
time for that. So he can't even teach the
They
kids. the
don't have
rules.
any time
Huh?
for teaching rules. It's all marketing.
It's curriculum,
Right.
and they just didn't have the hours available in the curriculum to give him a 5-hour course or whatever it is he wanted. If it was a 3-hour or whatever. So he
As a-
just sort of has to work it in.
You would think that if you're, you think if you're a student up there, that's one of the things you want to take, a 3-hour course or whatever.
Yeah, but maybe, but
Well,
Well,
there's a lot to the golf curriculum.
one of the courses he teaches is like the very intro level to becoming a pro and going through the process. So I mean, he's involved from step one. I mean, that's pretty important to learn, like, you know, what it takes to be a professional of the process. And then he also teaches like a hospitality class as well about working at high-end public courses or public clubs, yacht clubs, Detroit Athletic Club types, things like that as well. And then he teaches, I think, one of the class, I forget exactly, it's a higher level, but working as a club pro.
Is he still going out on tour to officiate?
Did he go to Masters this year?
I don't know if he did last year. I know this year he said,
The last time I know he went to Augusta.
yeah.
He worked hole number 7.
Last year or this year?
2015.
Oh, that was the last year.
Yeah, so last year I know he went to Augusta.
This year he says he's going to work the PGA at Quail Hollow, and then he's also going over to work the BMW European Tour event over in England.
Good work if you
Those are his only 2 events, or at least what he told me.
Okay.
But I'm sure he'll tell us all in March. Hopefully March 25th, you guys will all be there. Should be a lot
Fifth
of
or
fun.
4th?
25th,
Yeah.
I misspoke.
Saturday
Coming up very quick.
Not,
Yep.
not Saturday, the 25th.
at Oak Point. All right. Key decisions here or did we get through everything here? Yeah, we did. This is just the process that decisions and things get sent to the USGA, so. And then one other thing too, I had in my notes, the USGA is not gonna give you a ruling on something that's not played according to the rules of golf. So if we were to ask them a question about the GAM scramble, for example, they would not give us
It's
a
your
ruling
tournament,
about
it's
that.
your rules, you tell us
Exactly,
what the
exactly.
So they did
a lot of
that
times-
to Oldsmobile.
Yeah, a lot of times at the club level, you'll have these events that maybe mixed match play and stroke play or something like that. They won't give any rulings on that because it's not
not their
actual form
rules.
of play. Yep,
It's not a form.
right.
Makes sense.
All right. Any questions on 34? All right. Next week, that's all we got for today. We're caught up finally. Next week, we're going to go over Rule 6, which is the player. 33 is the committee. 30. I don't remember that one. 4-ball something, I think. 4-ball stroke play, I think. 31.
30 and 30.
No, actually 31 is 4-ball stroke play. 30 is yeah, is match play. And then Rule 29 and 32, which is stable for bogey competitions. So a little bit tying up loose ends here, and then we've got one more session where we'll cover some actual rules, and from there we'll do some practice testing and just